Hi, welcome back to Case Cleanup, where we cut through the bullshit, torch the panic narratives, and tell the story the way it actually fucking happened. The murder of 17-year-old Gary Lauwers, a drug-fueled escalation that spiraled fast. And then it got repackaged as a satanic horror story. And this is Richard Kasso, the Dick. Let's get into it. In the summer of 1984, Northport, Long Island was quiet in the way that lets people convince themselves nothing truly bad could happen there. Parents assumed closeness meant safety. Familiar streets meant protection. Trouble was something that happened somewhere else to someone else. And Gary Lauwers was 17. Moving through that summer the way teenagers do when they're old enough to roam and young enough to still need adults who are actually paying attention, which we all know in the 80s wasn't every parent's strength. He spent time with friends, experimented with drugs, drifted into the woods at night because it felt like freedom and because nobody stopped these kids from doing it. You see, the woods weren't scary to them. They were familiar. A place to disappear for a few hours, a place where rules and adults just don't exist. And one of the people Gary spent time with was Richard Kasso. Kasso wasn't just another bored 17-year-old kid getting high. He actually dealt the drugs, PCP, LSD, and really whatever he can get his filthy little dick beaters on. He liked to behave in a way that would get people to react to him, the way conversations changed when he showed up. He liked to present himself as some dark being who worshipped the devil, and he loved the negative attention that he got from it. You know, like the weird kid in the halls who used to hiss at people when they'd walk by. Yeah, you know the type. He even went as far as to give himself a dumb fucking nickname, the Acid King. Not as a joke or as irony, as like an actual identity. A dumb one, but one that got him noticed. You know, people noticed him long before Gary ever went into the woods with him that night. The police noticed him, and mental health professionals noticed him too. In fact, psychiatric evaluations of Kasso characterized him as having antisocial behavior, but ultimately concluded that he was neither actively psychotic, nor was he a threat or a danger to others. He'd also already been arrested for disturbing behavior, including digging up graves. And on top of that, Kasso was acquainted with the members of a loosely organized group of friends, a gang, who sold marijuana. A silly gang. And they actually referred to themselves as Knights of the Black Circle. And weeks before Gary was killed, the situation between him and Kasso had already turned violent. Gary took PCP from Kasso without paying for it. Kasso found out, and, well, he beat the dog shit out of him. And that should have been the moment that this story stopped, but if that were true, I wouldn't be here on your screen invading your personal space right now. Instead, it kept going. On June 19th, Gary went back into the woods with Kasso and two other teens. Same place they'd gone before, same routine, and the plan was pretty simple. Get fucking high and let the night blur its way into oblivion. They believed they were taking mescaline, a hallucinogen, in which investigators later believed it was far more likely LSD, possibly mixed with PCP. And that combination is important, because PCP doesn't just distort reality, it strips away sanity, and it hones in on aggression. It turns paranoia into action. And as the drugs took hold, the atmosphere shifted, and not in a fun way. Conversations warped, and familiar faces started to feel wrong. What happened next didn't explode all at once, it kind of crept in. A confrontation that lingered way too long. A moment that turned physical and didn't stop when it should have. Kasso went after Gary with his hands first, beating him, overpowering him, and fucking biting him. And this was deliberate and personal. Then the knife came out. In the darkness of the woods, Gary was stabbed again and again and again. Medical reports would later estimate at least 17 stab wounds, with some accounts placing the number much higher. But the exact count almost doesn't matter. What matters is that it didn't stop. And this wasn't self-defense or fear, this was control. During the attack, Kasso demanded that Gary say that he loved Satan. That demand would later become the headline, the hook, and the it factor part of the story that people couldn't let go of, and the media made money on it. But Gary didn't give Richard what he wanted. Instead, with whatever breath he had left, Gary said he loved his mother. And he didn't do that to make a point or to be defiant, but he did it to hold on to something human while he was being savagely murdered. Gary died there in those woods, and afterward, his body wasn't carefully hidden or even treated with respect. It was covered with leaves and debris, just enough to keep it out of sight. A shallow, careless attempt to delay consequences. And then they just fucking left him there. They walked out of the woods and went back to their bullshit lives while Gary was left behind, decomposing in the summer heat. For 2 weeks, Gary was missing. His family waited while the people who knew exactly where he was said nothing. And eventually, an anonymous tip led police into the woods. Investigators pulled back leaves and dirt and found what had been left behind to rot. A shallow grave, a 17-year-old boy reduced to evidence. Richard Kasso was arrested, but before he could ever answer for what he'd done in a courtroom, before a jury could hear the evidence and, say he is guilty, before any of that, Kasso killed himself in his jail cell like a coward. And that was the end of him, and to be honest with you, good fucking riddance. Afterwards, another teen was charged. Confessions surfaced and then they all collapsed. Witness statements contradicted each other, and by 1985, the case just fell apart and the jury acquitted the kid. No one was convicted for Gary Lauwers' murder. And instead of confronting how this happened, the media chose something easier and said something more sensational. Satan, heavy metal, black clothing. Basically a cop-out loud enough to drown out the truth. Gary Lauwers didn't die because of Satan. He died because Richard Kasso was a piece of shit, wannabe Satan fanboy with unchecked mental health issues. End of story. No, literally, that's the end of the story. That's the case. That's the whole cleanup. And if you're still awake after that, you might as well follow Hot Mess Murder Club for full-length episodes where we deep dive into cases from start to finish. New episodes drop every Monday. And you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, fucking obviously, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, and basically really anywhere else that you get your podcasts from. But these case cleanups, they live here on YouTube, just for you. Goodbye.
Say bye, Kiki.